sweater. Oh, 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 I love it when you wear that sweater. You see, it's all about the motive, not about the showbiz or the cool kids sitting in the corner.
Hello, welcome to episode 54 of the My Two Tips podcast. Hi, welcome to episode 54 of the My Two Tips podcast. My name is Elise. I am the host of this channel, video, podcast, whatever. It is, I don't know, July. It's hot. Not enjoying the heat. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, you can find me there as E_Garnier. If you would like to find me on Ravelry, I'm E Garnier. The YouTube channel is My Two Tips Podcast, and we also have a Ravelry group for the My Two Tips Podcast in the groups tab. So those are kind of where you can find me. If you would like to email me about something on the podcast, you can email me at mytwotips@gmail.com, and we'll get into why I also have that email address in a little bit. So I have recently finished my Vanora pullover, and I love it. So I finished seaming it not too long ago. Might be too breezy. So how this is knit, it's knit from the bottom up, and you end up seaming it all together. You even knit the arms flat, so you seam them kind of underneath the armpit. I really enjoyed this. This is a pattern that came from the Brooklyn Tweed Gansies collection that they came out with 2 years ago, maybe, somewhere. So it is an all over textured pattern, and on this side the kind of are they parallelograms, I think, run in one direction, and then on this side, after the mid cable, they start running or being angled on a different side. The cables are also mirrored from the midpoint. I really actually enjoyed knitting it. I know when I had first done the swatch for the pattern, the textured stitches were driving me bonkers, like just so irritating. And I think I just wasn't in the right headspace to work on it at that point. So I mean, I probably swatched for this back December maybe, and it's now July. So I mean, I did that a while ago, and I cast it on at the very end of May, I believe. May 31st is when I started. So it took me a while. I didn't work on it for a chunk of time. I kind of put my needles down for a while. But yeah, I really like it. The sleeves are just plain stockinette. This is my first seam sweater, so I feel like the sleeves pucker a little bit on both. And I don't know how to avoid that 100%, because technically as I was seaming, I kind of had to play with picking up like one leg or two leg of one stitch and just kind of hope that they matched up as well as possible. So that could be my gauge. It could also be maybe, you know, my measurements weren't quite as even for each kind of portion, but it does work. They definitely fit. There wasn't a huge hole gaping kind of in the very center of the armpit or anything like that. What else is interesting about this pattern? So it's by Michelle Wong. So the front cable that comes up, you end up splitting that cable, because I believe you also, okay, so you're knitting from the bottom up, you end up shaping your armhole, shaping your neckline, and binding kind of the front of the sweater off, but you leave the stitches for the cables live, and you end up splitting the cable. So one, like the right cross, ends up, you knit for a portion, and then you do the same thing with the left cross, and you knit it so that the whole thing ends up wrapping around the back, and you have to seam it on to the back collar edge. Knitting those two little strips of cables was fiddly, very, very fiddly, but you kind of get into a rhythm like with any knitting, so it didn't take me that long once I actually sat down. I was like, I'm gonna do this. But definitely a little fiddly, but I think it pays off because it finishes off the collar quite nicely without having to be like really bulky or anything, and I kind of like that there's no ribbing. On the bottom, there's no ribbing either, just goes straight into the pattern. The sleeves have a tiny little pearl kind of ridge to it, which I think is just kind of nice. I think it'll wear really well because it doesn't really flare or anything. But I'm very excited to have this sweater. It is way too hot to wear it now. The pattern is all the way on the back as well. I did not alternate skeins or anything. I think the colors are pretty closely matched. You can see on the front there's a little bit of some darker colors in there, but that's just natural from the yarn. They do appear in other spots as well, but that just seemed to have a little bit of a concentration of darker color, I guess. And I think kind of where it lies is also on like a whole strip of the texture section, so I think some of it is pattern, some of it is yarn, but I'm happy with it. So the pattern is by Michelle Wong for Brooklyn Tweed. The yarn I used is from Abundant Earth and Fiber that I picked up at Knit City this past year, so 2017. Yeah, I believe that's right. So it is a 90% merino, 10% targi blend, and it is so squishy but light, and like it's definitely warm. It kind of has like this, I don't know if it's quite a silky feel to it, but it's just really lovely. And I don't even remember if there's actually a color to it. It's non-superwash. I'm so excited. I'll insert some photos and stuff, but it's pretty much all I finished since I last talked to you, because I hadn't really been knitting a whole lot.
And don't stab me across the place, me in disgrace. Now you can't relate to my everyday life. I was doing it right till you came along and broke my stride. Volume high enough to drown it out. Doing loving on my woman's couch. Jesus, why you gotta be so loud? Let me be the one to make you shout. Oh, 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 I love it when you wear that sweater. Oh, 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 I love it when you wear that sweater.
So if you have followed me on Instagram and have been on Ravelry within the last week, you will see that I released my very first knitting pattern, which is the straight line sock Yeah, I put it up for Ravelry. It's up there for $5 Canadian because after talking to quite a few people, the amount of work that goes in to writing a pattern and having testers test it, I ended up having, I believe, 5 or 6 testers, which was great because having people look over your work, they just pick up on things that, you know, it could be a grammar little thing. It could be, oh, this number isn't quite right, it needs to be this, or things like that, which is the whole point of testing. So thank you to all of my lovely testers. The pattern is now live. If you have any questions about the pattern, you can message me on Ravelry about it. You can also send any questions to my2tips@gmail.com, and that is what's also associated to the PayPal account in which your purchases go to. So it's a nice way to keep track of things that way. I don't know if I can actually get that email linked up to the podcast episodes, but I'm not too worried about it. So I guess that's all I have to say about that. As far as what I'm working on now, I have 2 swatches to talk about. So the first one is not, okay, good. Is this lovely little guy. Really? I'm gonna close the door. So that might not have cut down all the noises that might come through. There are a ton of birds around the apartment and somebody was running a lawnmower. So fingers crossed the noise isn't too ridiculous. This swatch, which isn't picking up so great on the camera, that's a little better. There are tons of little flecks in this black yarn. This is the Roslyn yarn from Cascade, and it is a, let me get the label, or one with the label. So Cascade Roslyn yarn. It is 65% wool and 35% silk. I got it in this black with white and blue flecks, and there is, I believe it's a DK weight, they say, and there is approximately 382 yards in a ball. I purchased this with the intent of making the Morning Mist tea, which is by somebody. But I can't go on. Annie Claire, that seems to ring a bell, and the pattern does have a lace section across like the back yoke kind of section, the upper back portion, and traditionally in this pattern it is knit in a contrast color. The entire front and the bottom of the back are knit in your main color. I'm doing it all in this. Last year, Kayla, who used to run the 3 Jewels Knit podcast, she knit a version of this pattern in one entire color, which I thought was just rather gorgeous. So I'm copycatting, and I think this will be my project for the, are you ready, Cal announcement, for the Rhine Backup Cal that I am co-hosting with Caitlin of the Wool Jewel podcast. And essentially the Cal is to knit something for Rhinebeck, something that is a little bit more warmer weather appropriate, because over the last few years, especially last year, Rhinebeck weather was hot, hot, hot. So if you would like to knit a t-shirt, a tank top, I would even allow like a shrug kind of thing in possibly more of like a summery fiber fingering weight sweater, by all means go ahead. I don't think we're going to be super strict, stingy, like, but if you're thinking more along like a summer type of garment, that's what we're going for. Yeah, essentially that cal has started. So if you have already cast on something, let's say from beginning of July, you are good to go. The end date is for the weekend of Rhinebeck, so I believe that is October 20th, 23rd, somewhere in there, end of October-ish. As far as I know, I am not going to Rhinebeck this year, so in order to be eligible for the cal, you just have to join in. If you're going to Rhinebeck, if you're going to Rhinebeck, great. If you're not going but you want to partake in it, fantastic. For those that are local, if you want it to be like your Knit City backup sweater, I'd be okay with that too. If you're going to Knit City, if you're not going to Knit City, totally fine. Because Knit City happens like the last weekend of September, so it can potentially be warm then too. Why not have a backup, slightly lighter sweater garment for that weekend as well. There is a thread in both my Ravelry group and Caitlin's Ravelry group, the Wool Jewel podcast group. So feel free to check that out for any more details, join in with chit chat, post stuff. Yay! And hopefully I'll cast this one on soon. The other swatch that I have here is probably something that I think a lot of people will have a little bit of familiarity with, because I have swatched, kind of. Okay, gonna have to hold it this way. For the Tecumseh sweater by Boylan Knitworks. I did the swatch in the round with like carrying the yarn through the back. I do not enjoy that. I also don't really like my swatch. I'm not happy with the gauge of the color work in here, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up a needle size for all of the color work. However, this color work laid pretty nicely, but I'll see what happens. My gauge is slightly off. I believe my stockinette, I have about 20 stitches per 4 inches and I need 22. So it should be okay. It's an oversized garment. I'm just worried about that color work. Like, that is flatter, but when it relaxes, it really squishes in. Through my cross section, I had about 24 stitches in 4 inches, and I believe they wanted 22. Not as bad in this section because it was lying that much flatter. I love my colors, but I'm just not 100% certain of how I want to approach it with this stupid cross gauge. Yeah, so I have technically cast that on, if this will come out. So I did the cast on with a tubular cast on because I figured, why the hell not? Might as well try something new. I think I messed it up slightly because I can see a line of stitches at the end on both sides of it. It doesn't look horrible. It does stretch quite a bit. I just don't know if I actually like how it knit up. at this needle size. So this is on a US 4 3.5 millimeter needle, which is what the pattern calls for your ribbing in the pattern. I just don't know. I think I might go back, because I'm also worried about the sizing a little bit. I might go back and just cast on the larger size, because that'll mess up with the stitches for the medium size in the body. I might do some fudging around with the top of it, but we'll see what happens. So that is a questionable cast on. I think I'm gonna rip it out actually. So the main color I am using is this color here, and it is Madeline Tosh DK, and it is, sorry, their names always mess me up. So it is Madeline Tosh DK in the 11 light. It is a Stranger Things colorway, which is fairly new, I believe. This is what it looks like in this game. So you can see that there's actually a ton of speckles in there. When I wind it up, you see that there is huge sections without any speckles. So I think it's going to require a little bit more yarn management than I really want to do, but I'm okay with it. It'll be fine. I just have to decide how I'm going to do it, because I have a feeling when I wind up each ball, I will end up having, you know, depending on which end goes through my winder first, I'll either have all the white on the outside or on the inside, just depending. So stay tuned for that. I don't really want to swatch again, only because it's annoying to swatch with the color work in the round like that. It just, I don't feel it's an accurate representation for my knitting style. My first contrast color is this dark, it's showing up darker than it actually is, I believe. It's not quite that vibrant, but this is Flycatcher Blue. And then my second contrast color is another Stranger Things colorway, and this is Meet Me in the Basement. There are some like yellow speckles that pop up, some browns, some greens. I think it'll really, really be nice. And there's quite a bit of tonality to it, so I'm happy with them. I think they do look pretty good together. But you can even see in this swatch, all of that main color had like 1 or 4 speckles total. Not a whole lot, but we'll see how it turns out. As for what I'm working on actively, because there's only one thing, and it's a new cast on. So I can't remember, because I don't think I actually had the swatch done last time. I swatched for the Iris, yeah, this is gonna be tricky, for the Iris Shrug by Bee Mandarines, which is Melody Hoffman, I believe. They say to aggressively swatch the whole project, so I aggressively swatched, or stretched my swatch, but I think I actually like it a little bit more relaxed. I am knitting this out of black yarn. I am definitely in like a black phase. This big black circle of no detail is Spud and Chloe sock, which is wool and silk. Not exactly sure the content, but I will put it up on the screen. Possibly like an 80-20, I think. I've used it before for socks, and I do really enjoy knitting with it. The dyed is a lot softer than like the natural gray that I use, so I think it'll be quite nice for a shrug. And so the pattern, I've done quite a bit. So I have done, I believe 11 repeats of chart 1, which is the first half of the shrug. I'm really into a groove with it now, which is kind of amazing. I don't feel like it requires as much thought, but I do really like it. And I have to take a better measurement of what I have. I think I'm supposed to knit to about 18.5 inches, and I'm pretty close. I know it looks huge when I hold it up there, but when you just hold it like this, it doesn't seem quite as long. So we'll see. And then because you do a provisional cast on, don't know if that's gonna pick up, you unpick and then you knit chart 2 to the same measurement in the other direction. And yeah, so this I'm thinking I might also count as something for our Rhine backup cal. It is a garment, it does have tiny sleeves, it's open, it's got silk, it should be kind of light and airy, but a nice piece to wear. And that's it. Don't have a whole lot else to share with you. I did make quite a few acquisitions when I was out in Ontario back in June. I'm thinking I might do some kind of like stash enhancement video because I brought home quite a bit of yarn. Brought home quite a bit. So maybe stay tuned for a haul video of some sort. I don't know if you guys enjoy seeing stash enhancement, because that's how I talk, not at all. If you guys want to see videos that are like stash haul related, let me know. I don't mind showing stuff. I enjoy seeing what other people have found and if they're planning on using it for something, or if they just saw a pretty skein of yarn and brought it home. I kind of enjoy it because it lets me know what's out there, and I find, depending on who you're watching podcast wise, people live in different areas than you do. People have local or different local indie dyers, so like it's just a really nice way to kind of see what's happening in the yarn world. If you guys are into that, great. I don't mind starting up kind of some second videos or anything. If you're not into it, it's totally cool. I can leave it out. If it's a separate video, you don't have to watch it. So let me know your opinions on that. Hopefully I've talked about everything I want to talk about. And we'll see you next time. Bye!